Guys, Brian Mouse with turpmechanic.com. What you see behind me here is Bermudagrass. It hasn't been mowed 10 days or so, give or take. I got a lot of seed heads showing up. Before I cut the grass for the first time in a long time, I want to take this opportunity to talk about the differences between common Bermuda grass and hybrid Bermuda grass. And I'm going to zero in on the seed head of the plant. So if you don't know what type of Bermuda grass you have, it doesn't matter. If you do have a hybrid Bermuda grass, they still make seed heads. This video is going to be relevant for a wide variety of people out there. I'm going to go ahead and show you some really super duper up close pictures of seed heads at various stages. I have seed heads that are just forming. I have seed heads that are completely mature. And kind of to put a little bit of extra flavor into this video is I don't know, let's see here, where's my hand? I don't know what kind of Bermuda grass I have here in this lawn. I moved into this house a while back, it's about 18 months ago. I didn't plant this Bermuda grass. I've just been tending to it. And because of that, whenever I get the question, do you have common Bermuda grass or hybrid? I can't give a definitive answer. So I want to get to the point where I can give a definitive answer. And then perhaps in the future, I'll be able to narrow it down to the kind of cultivar, or if I have a hybrid, maybe I can start identifying which hybrid variety I have in my own lawn. That's a big if. So to start down this path, we're going to start with the seed heads. Let's go take a look. All right, from far away, the lawn looks green and beautiful, but let's get up really close. We got seed heads everywhere. But I guarantee you that there's some differences within these seed heads. Let's take a look right here. See this one? Pluck it. Stick it right there. Let the camera focus. This particular seed head has 4 spikes. And then as we get closer on the spike, you can see each individual spikelet. Now those spikelets will eventually become seeds, but only if they are pollinated. You don't really see the parts, possibly right there is one. But this seed head is not quite ready to be pollinated yet. Let me show you a different one. Here, see the difference. In this one, we don't see the pollen sacs yet, but here we do. See how they're floating in the wind? They're connected to the spikes with little filaments. It's basically just an attachment. And each one of those things that are just kind of like floating back and forth in the wind, those are pollen sacs. It's the male reproductive part of the Bermuda grass flower. Now, in a hybrid Bermuda grass, those pollen sacs do not actually make pollen. But the pollen has to pollinate something for a viable seed to form. And currently, I don't see hardly any, if any at all, female stigmas on this seed head, on this inflorescence. So let's see if we can find another one that actually is got the female part. All right, here's one that I just found. I just plucked it out right there. I want to take this inside and show you up close in a better lighting environment. Although that's pretty good camera work right there, if I do say so myself. Let me just keep it right here. So right above my thumbnail, you can see the male parts flapping in the wind down there. Now the uppermost tip, which is, I can't even point in here, but kind of in front of my finger, there are slightly darker pink flowers. That's the stigma, or the female part. It's basically like this little fluffy flower that's looking for pollen. So the little tiny pollen sacs that are blowing in the wind, as they hang down, the pollen comes out and it goes onto the flower to pollinate it. Once it's pollinated, that's when the seed can actually start forming in terms of viability. But here's the thing. Common Bermuda grass doesn't typically self-pollinate, meaning if this little flower, if this little seed head creates pollen and attempts to pollinate itself, it's not likely to create viable seed. There are actually tons and tons of, let's call it natural hybrids out there, where this plant, this single individual plant, will create pollen and pollinate something over here. And this will create some pollen and pollinate something over here. And this and that and this and that. Just like people do in regular society. Now, there are some minor instances of common Bermuda grass that can self-pollinate, but those minor instances are not the majority. If you really knew what you were doing in a science lab, you could actually take a look at the chromosomes of a common Bermuda grass, and you would find 36 chromosomes. And when there are 36 chromosomes, then that allows the pollen to be produced. And if the pollen is produced, then the stigma can actually accept pollen and produce viable seed. In the vast majority of hybrid Bermuda grasses, what they do is they pollinate with two different kinds of Bermuda grass, one of which has 18 chromosomes, the other has 36, and the result is a Bermuda grass that has 27 chromosomes. When there's 27 chromosomes, then the pollen is not produced in these little flowing sacs down at the bottom. Now, in nature, if this plant pollinates this plant, it's going to result in another plant with 36 chromosomes. And it's going to have a mother and a father. And that new seed, that new viable seed, has a mother and a father, and it just keeps on going. In a laboratory, we could sit there and take the best mother and the best father and create a 27 chromosome plant that makes seed heads but not viable seeds and has the desirable traits that we want. And that's the fancy Bermuda grass that we call hybrids that we buy in the stores. Put them down on the lawn as sprigs or sod or whatnot. They grow up, they make these seed heads, and the seed heads are not viable. They can only be spread vegetatively or from the original seed packet that you buy at the store. All right, I'm going to go take this inside and stick it down next to the other Bermuda grass seed heads that I plucked earlier in this video. Oh, my knees. All right, there we go. Here we've got a seed head that's not quite ready. So it doesn't have the male anthers yet, or those pollen sacs. And it doesn't have the female reproductive part yet either, the stigma. We're just looking at spikes and spikelets here. Here, this second one, we're starting to see a lot of anthers, pollen sacs, but few, if any, stigma. And now this plant right here, let me get my finger out of the way so that I can focus it better. We've got a little bit of everything going on it. This thing is in the peak reproductive stage. Now, prior to all of this, the spike starts forming. Let me show you what that looks like. All right, let's go hunting back into the lawn for the earliest stage of the seed heads, of the spikes. Stick with me if you want to get to the end stage where you can actually find viable seed, or at least you can find seed that you can then later determine if it's viable. So let's go down and hunt. All right, so we got our classic seed head. Here, look at this. See how that's a seed head that hasn't opened up yet. Let me see if I can find a better one. So there you go. So this is that seed head just before it pops open. It looks like, like a little torch, a little tiki torch. I'm going to take that inside and stick it on my stove next to the others. And then I'm going to go over and find you a mature seed head that we can actually harvest seeds off of. I'm going to call this 4 stages of early seed head. Because even with this one, if some of the flowers on top have been pollinated by a neighboring plant, the seeds are not viable yet. They still need time to mature. All right, let's go back outside, but we're not going here. We're going over to this brown pot over here. This brown pot that you see is the exact same Bermuda grass that's growing in the lawn. I actually clipped stolons of it last fall. It was about 7 or 8 months ago. Stuck them in this pot, grew it. That's called vegetative. I don't know. It's vegetative. That's the vegetative spread of Bermuda grass. So you can see, it's still alive in here, but I allowed it to grow unchecked, untamed. It's grown tons of stolons out of the side. It grew bajillion seed heads, and then I let everything go brown. Everything matured. So I'm just going to grab those at random, and let's take them inside and take a look. Remember, I don't know if it's common Bermuda grass or hybrid Bermuda grass, but it is a vegetative clipping. It is identical, genetically identical to what is currently growing in the lawn. I just don't know what it is yet. All right, here we go. I'm going to just set that there, and then let's examine. All right. I'm going to try to work with this. So this is one of those two that I plucked out of my pot. And you can see that all of the flowers are gone, the male and the female. What we're left is what looks like just a brown spike. It looks like it died, but I promise you, it hasn't. Well, I mean, it kind of has, but it's different. It's not like it died. I'm going to pluck one spike off. You see this? You can go against the grain. Look at that. Now they're all sticking up. Those are all the seeds. Are they viable? That is what we need to test. Or at least it's what I'm going to test. So I'm going to kind of just coax them off. You know, see this right here? All of that is seed. Let me move this out of the way. I could do that for every spike and pull off a whole bunch of seeds. Now, I want you to understand that these seeds are what we call unhulled. So if you're ever looking at Bermuda grass seeds, you can find hulled and unhulled. These are unhulled, which means that the outer hull, let's call it a skin, is on the outside of these seeds. So these seeds will take a little bit longer to germinate, if they're viable, than hulled seeds are. Now, if you go to the store, any store really, and you buy your own Bermuda grass seed, it's most surely going to be a hybrid variety that will produce unviable seeds. If you buy sod, then the same thing applies. This particular bag of Arden 15, this is actually a discontinued variety, as far as I know, but its seeds look like this. Notice that they are blue. They're colored. They're coated. And if you look at the bag, it says 15% of the material is seed, and the other 49% is inert. That means it has been hulled and then coated. So the outer hull has been removed, and then they've coated it for better germination. It doesn't really say that on the bag, but I do know that it's really easy to germinate these seeds because I've done it in less than a week. It took something like 6 days or so in a test experiment that I did a long time ago to get those seeds to start growing. These seeds, since they're unprocessed and unhulled, if they are viable, they should start growing in about 10 days. So this is the test that I'm going to be doing. I want to know if I have a common Bermuda grass variety growing out in the lawn or a hybrid. So if I plant these seeds, and I'm going to actually collect as many seeds as I possibly can, throw them all into a pot, and see if I can grow any of them. If I can grow anything from these seeds, then I know that I've got a common Bermuda grass variety or a naturally occurring hybrid. Now, having said all of that, there's another thing that we can do to check for hybrid versus common, and that has to do with the pollen sacs, otherwise known as the anther or anthers. Now, this is the part that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do, especially on camera, is I want to check for pollen. Everyone knows what pollen is. You go up to your favorite beautiful flower, you can tap pollen out. These are so stinking small that how do you get pollen out of it? So one thing you can do is you can find one with the anthers flapping and just start patting it on a clean surface with contrast and see if you can get anything to come out. This seems kind of silly. It actually works. So if you've ever done this with any other flower, you know for a fact the pollen comes out. So here I got a couple things popping, but honestly I'm not convinced that that is pollen. I think it's just the flower kind of falling apart as I tap it. Now, considering the fact that when I tap it, I'm not feeling any, or I'm not noticing any pollen come out, I'm starting to suspect that this might not be common Bermuda grass, but rather a hybrid of some variety. Now, you might suspect that those are little bits of pollen popping out, but they're actually not. Let me zoom in even more. These little guys are actually the pollen sacs. They're the anthers. These things should be holding the pollen, and man, those things are tiny. I wonder if I can cut them open. My guess is these little sacs do not appear to be open or full or releasing any pollen of any kind. I'm going to guess that I got a Bermuda grass in my lawn that is a hybrid. Best way to tell from here, though, is to harvest a whole bunch of that seed and see if it grows. And that's what I'm going to do. Truth be told, I have no idea how this video is going to come out because taking close-up shots of teeny tiny things like this, trying to explain really scientific stuff in layman's terms, and not to mention the fact that I am not the scientist that many of you think I might be. A lot of these terms are new terms to me. I just know things based on the layman's terms. It's a flower. Flowers pollinate and things like that. Grass has flowers and many grasses have them. See back there? That's corn back there. It does the same thing. We grow corn. What are they called? The tassels drop pollen down onto the silks, and each silk is connected to a corn kernel, and then they start growing. That's how it grows its corn that we eat or that we turn back into new seed. So same thing. Same thing happens over here with the buffalo grass. There's male and female flowers, parts of that as well. Same thing with kikuyu grass. Lots of things that do this. With Bermuda grass, though, everything is so tiny that it's really, really hard for me, an amateur here, to show. But hopefully the explanation has opened your eyes a little bit. I'm not going to find out for sure if I've got hybrid Bermuda grass for a while. I'm going to work on those seeds. That's not going to be part of this video. I certainly do incorporate a lot of this material in future videos down the road. So if you're interested in learning along with me, make sure to, I don't know, hit a like button or save, subscribe, whatever it is that you do, just do it. Regardless, all forms of buffalo grass, all forms of Bermuda grass will grow and spread vegetatively. That means you can put down the stolons, you can put down the rhizomes, you can pull plugs and plant them in other areas. You can pull sprigs and plant them in other areas, and it's just going to keep on spreading. You're going to get that actual identical, genetic makeup of your thing. So even if you don't know what you have in your lawn and you go off to the store and you're tempted to buy some grass seed, you might not be putting down, you probably won't be putting down the same variety of Bermuda grass. And that's why vegetative spreading is so useful. If you want your lawn to actually look like the same color and texture all across the board and you already have Bermuda grass growing, then skip the seed, harvest your own if you can, or do the vegetative spread via plugs that you make yourself or sprigs that you make yourself. I got videos on both of those things right up here. Make sure to take a look at that next to continue going down the rabbit hole. Maybe a little bit too deep down the rabbit hole.